Hi everyone, I hope you are all well. It's Sunday morning. I just had a really nice cool shower and really weirdly, it's really cool outside. Don't know where this has come from in this crazy heat wave that we're having at the minute. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to quickly record this review. So what I've been up to since my last video, which is what I think 2 weeks ago now, not much. Just like everybody else, not much really. Getting back to life in a somewhat norm, but obviously that can change at any minute if lockdown restrictions have to change, etc. Work has been hellish again, and yeah, so I'm just kind of taking each day as it comes. But there was something that I have purchased, which is due to arrive tomorrow, which I swore I would never buy because it was too expensive. But now I'm like, fuck it, because of quarantine and craziness that's going on. Why don't I just go crazy and buy this one thing I said I'd never buy? I've gone and bought the Lego Hogwarts Castle 6,000 piece Lego Hogwarts Castle. So I'm pretty excited about it. At the same time, I'm quite daunted by what I'm going to get tomorrow, and I'm going to start that tomorrow and see how it go. But anyway, yeah, it's been weird, and with this heat wave that's happening as well at the moment, brains are just a bit fuzzy and frazzled. And it didn't help last night. I went to bed, I was hellish tired, and when I went to bed, fireworks started going off over my house. Yay, isn't that lovely? So I ended up going to bed late and still waking up early as I usually do. So I got big black circles under my eyes and I look an absolute mess, but I'm sure you can forgive me for that. Anyway, I'm here to talk about the book I've been reading, which is In Byron's Wake by Miranda Seymore, about Byron's wife, Annabella Milbank, which is there, and their daughter, Ada. Ada Lovelace, the absolutely wonderful Ada Lovelace. I love Ada. So I got this at the Cheltenham Literature Festival, I think 2 years ago now. Or it could possibly be 3. So 2 or 3, I can't remember. Anyway, and I was there to attend a lecture which Miranda was taking part of. It was a panel of people talking about Mary Shelley. And at the same time, I bought her biography of Mary Shelley, which is the book I'm going to be reading next. But she was also promoting her new book, In Byron's Wake and a Boy, at the same time. And so, yeah, that's the story of how I got hold of this book. Now, Ada Lovelace is a woman who I have always kind of admired. I really like Ada. Ada was the woman who actually wrote with the very first evidence writing of the concept of the modern computer. And she was enthralled by Charles Babbage's machine to kind of make that happen, and she was kind of a mathematical genius. And I remember when I started university studying IT that I attended a lecture about Ada, and I absolutely loved that lecture. It was brilliant. So I already knew a load about Ada, and more recently she was featured in a Doctor Who episode. Woohoo! But I didn't know really anything about Annabella Milbank, apart from she was this feminist, strong kind of feminist sort of woman. She very much. When I say right, I think I've said the wrong word there. She was feminist, but at the same time she was very much man is man, kind of thing. She knew her place, but she was very bold and wanted to break out of that place in a way. So she was a feminist, but she never referred to herself as a feminist. Kind of. She was an interesting character, but she was very much rights of workers and stuff like that. So she raised her voice when it needed to be raised, but she was mainly a poet, and she fell under the umbrella of the ego that was Lord Byron. Married him, quickly regretted it, abandoned him, and had his child. And so that is what this book covers. Now, I've not read any Miranda Seymore before, so I didn't know what I was going into. She is a very well-respected biographer and such, so I I trust in Miranda's work and everything, that I was going to be comfortable with this. And I was comfortable with this book. I really was. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. So I think the issue that I had, it's not a big issue, but it was still an issue which makes me put it in the good category, not the great category, is the way that she constructed the book. Because the first chapter, it's written like fiction about this little girl who's posing for a portrait, and she's saying this, that, or other, and she's picked the background for the painting. She's told the artist exactly how he wants her depicted and stuff like this. And I'm like, oh, this is an interesting way to open up a biography. And then all of a sudden she goes into historian mode, and it's then told kind of third person and as a biography standard in. So I was like, oh, okay, that's broad. I also didn't quite like the way that she flips back and forth between these two women, because obviously she's writing a biography of two women and all of these other people that are in their world, and there's lots of them. There is lots of them, and there's lots of name dropping as well because of references. Like she talks about how Annabella came into contact with Claire Clairmont, who was Mary Shelley's sister, who had an affair with Byron. So there's that, and she makes references to like Charles Dickens because of Babbage's work inspired him to write Mr. Gradgrind in his book Hard Times and such. So there's lots of names being thrown out all over the place, and places and such as well. So there's a lot going on in this book, and it's not that big a book for telling the lives of these two women. I was a bit not annoyed by the way that she flips back and forth, but it just kind of felt at times a lot of a chapter was focused on one of the ladies and only a little bit on the other, and then it would flip. There wasn't a consistent flow, if you see what I mean. So I think I would have preferred it, to be honest, if she did two separate books about two women. But because it's all about how Byron affected them way after his death and to this present day, I totally understand why she's done it as one, and the fact that they're mother and daughter as well, it makes sense. So even though I did have issues with the way it was constructed and the way that she went from kind of a fictional writing to third person standard biography writing, it was it was a good book. It wasn't great for me, but it was good. I really did like the way that she respected the subjects, but I did at times, I wanted her to ask questions. I do like it when a biographer takes something and says, okay, from our modern perspective, we can see it that, this is absolutely outrageous, da 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 da. But let's take it from the perspective of, in that time, what a woman could and couldn't do. And you were put in that position, what would you do? What would you say? I love it when biographers put that, because it does that, because it then makes you think about a wider perspective, and makes you think about society at that time versus now, and then allows you to ask questions and such. Whereas Miranda, at times, she was talking about something, and then she just kind of leave it kind of hanging and then just go straight into the next thing. I'm like, no, go back. So, for example, the last letter that Annabella here wrote to her husband, Lord Byron, when she separated him, is basically the letter saying, fuck you, I'm leaving, I'm taking our kid, you can't do this to me anymore, all this cheating and the whole scandal of you having sex with your sister. That's a whole other thing, but we'll talk about that in a second. I'm going. I can't deal with this anymore. I deserve so much more. Our daughter deserves so much more. I can't live in this debt-ridden, scandal, judgmental situation. I'm out. And Annabella begins it by calling Byron my dearest duck. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, why would a woman who is leaving her husband and basically calling him a dickhead and a douchebag for what he's done to her begin with a pet name? Why? And Miranda doesn't explore that. She just states the letter, says, you know, Annabelle then left, Byron ran off across the country and across water to, I think it was Paris he was off to at that point. And then right after he left, debt collectors came and took all of his stuff from the empty house. And but it was like, why didn't you ask the question about why would you do that? Why would you open with a pet name for a man who you are leaving and calling a douchebag for what you've done to? You know, I was just like, oh, come on, Miranda, just ask these kind of things. I don't know if it's newer historians and academics' way of viewing and telling history compared to earlier generations of historians and such. So it reminds me, to put it in perspective, another different historians. Look at Lucy Worsley. I love Lucy Worsley. She's a fantastic historian. She is very much, her personality jumps off the page just as jumps off her documentaries. She very much likes to ask questions. She likes to look at things a different perspective. She did an amazing series. I believe it's on iPlayer, but you can get on DVD as well, about Henry VIII and his 6 wives. If you follow my videos, I've shown it to you loads of times before because I fucking love it. I think it's amazing. But she very much breaks down each of those women and looks at them and all the situations and the historical evidence from a woman's perspective. Whereas if you look at David Starsky, who very much was the key historian of the 90s, I remember his Channel 4 programs. I've got loads of them on DVD. But he very much is, you know, straight. This is the historical documents. They are word by word what we have available. They are word by word truth. You cannot question them. This is what happened. And Lucy's over here going, no, honey, we're going to look at this in a different way, okay? I love that, a newer, fresher look at things and asking questions and breaking things down. Like I love in the Henry VIII one, when she talks about Catherine Howard. If you look at the evidence of what she says in her confession about the things of her possibly have had sex before marriage and everything, she explains how she had some form of relationship or relations, aka sex, with this couple of guys and such. And David Starkey very much plays it as, if you know, in his book and in his documentary series about Henry VIII and his wives, that she did that. You know, fact that this is that. But Lucy Worsley breaks it down, and she said, considering that she was 15 when she came to court and to marry Henry, because of the year that he's referring to, she was actually an abused child. We would refer to her as an abused child now. So why we can't look at this as she willingly had sex with him. We can't do that. And the tone of language and what Catherine is saying herself, he did things to her. He abused parts of her body. She's going, hello, she's quite possibly raped here. She is underage. She's a child. She is an abused child. Do you see what I mean? It's why we're asking questions about history and broadening our scope on things and our perspective, I think, is really important for modern historian perspective. And so I love historians like Lucy for doing that. And Miranda, in this case, she's kind of more on the David Starkey side for me in regards to, she's not asking questions I want her to ask questions about. So again, that's the reason why it's a good, but it's not a great. She does depict the situations well, and especially with the scandals, with Lord Byron, especially the massive scandal of him having sex with his half-sister Augustus, who Ada was named after. She was Augustus Ada, but when the marriage was over, and she left with baby Ada, who was only probably about 6 months old at that point or something. She stopped calling her Augustus. She was Ada. From that point on, for the rest of her life, she was Ada. And the way that Miranda tells this part of Byron's story, as well as Byron himself, he does feature, but he doesn't feature a great deal. He's pretty much, his story is only told over a couple of chapters, and the scandals and such, it's kind of like Chinese whispers of things that get heard in like ballrooms or parties and all of that lot. And then the public scandal is the part where everything gets blown up at crazy proportions. I'm not trying to say that what Byron did or didn't do, because technically we don't have any evidence to say that this actually happened. I'm not saying that it was justified that happening. No, not at all. It's not a good idea to have sex with your sibling, whether they're half siblings or not. Just no. But Byron, the way that she actually depicts Byron is the persona that we see, the charismatic, the poet, the man who oozes intellect, and everyone should bow down to him, and oh my gosh, but he just comes across to me, he always has, and I think I always have this, he's a douchebag. He to put it bluntly, he is an egotistical, stuck-up, spoilt, rich douchebag. And yeah, oh god, he was just horrible. And I didn't like how Miranda kind of gave him a bit of a glaze, as it were. But at the same time, I understand kind of why, because to understand how Annabella fell under his spell, you kind of needed to see him from her perspective, because she very quickly kind of fell for him. But what was really weird was that when her aunt knew that Annabella liked Byron, her aunt sent a private letter in which Annabella listed the virtues of, that she would see in a man to Lord Byron for him to study up to then court Annabella. And it's like, what? Her aunt was really weird meddling in her life. But there were, by the by, but, besides all that, because I've been going on for 18 minutes now, so I want to wrap this up. There were a lot of women. There was a lot of scandals. I hated the fact that Annabella was vilified after her death, because after her death, her private letters and her private journals were published, where she talks about Lord Byron, and everyone kind of turned on her because she wrote about all these negative things about him in her journals. It's her private journals. She can write whatever the hell she likes. And he was a douchebag. Again, I'm not going to put a shimmer over him, because he was horrible. But everyone saw the stunning man, the poet, the artist, the wonderful person, not the true reality of who she was. And Annabelle got vilified for that. And I don't see the whole persona that she was a pushy mother as well. I don't see that at all. I see a woman who is given her daughter the ability to explore and study maths and science and learn from great men and also women. She absolutely loved Charles Babbage and his wife. They got along so well. I really love Ada. I just realised that I've hardly mentioned Ada. I'm like 20 minutes in, but with Ada, she had this wonderful, bold spirit that she inherited from her mother, as well as a great mind. But she had the boldness of her father as well, and sometimes that could cause some issues, some frictions with people. But in the end, I think they were both wonderful women who we should respect, who we should acknowledge, for their minds, for their personalities and such. Yes, they had their bad traits, just as everyone has their bad traits. But I still respect them and such for everything that they went through, what they did in their life. So I'm going to wrap this up. I was going to do a reading, but I'm like 20 minutes in now, so I'm not going to. I've changed my mind. So, would I read this book again? I think so. I'm not wanting to right away because, as I said, I had issues with it. But maybe after a while, if I go back, see what I think. Yeah, maybe I should do that. Would I recommend this to anyone? I would, if they're interested to learn the history of these women. I wouldn't give it to someone who's a fan of Byron, to be honest. I know that sounds a bit like, I would recommend this to my sister because she's like me. She's not fond of Byron. She's read biographies of Byron, but she's not overly fond of him. But you know, it's not. He's not the key character. He is featured quite, you know, in sections, but he's not the key character. Thus, I would give it to somebody who wants to explore other areas of connections to Byron's life, or possibly don't like Byron at all. Would I read more books by Miranda Seymore? Well, the next book I'm going to be reading is by Miranda Seymore, which is known as the kind of definitive biography of Mary Shelley. So I'm definitely going to be reading more of her books. After that one, let's see if my response is still yes. So yeah, so that was In Byron's Wake by Miranda Seymore. Good book, not great, but interesting going into, now I know what to expect for the Mary Shelley. It'll be interesting to see if she does ask these various questions. The Mary Shelley book is significantly bigger, so it might take me, it's taken a couple of weeks to read this one, it might take me like 3 weeks to read the next one. So yeah, we'll see how we go with that. But yeah, very interesting to learn the lives of these women and how Byron impacted their lives all the way to their deaths. Okay, so there we are. So that was In Byron's Wake. If you read this book, I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below, or give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely up to you. I'll let you decide. And I'll be back with my thoughts on my next book I'm reading. As I said, it might take me a few weeks, especially if I've got Hogwarts Castle arriving tomorrow. Which is Mary Shelley by Miranda Seymore. And I'm really chuffed that I got through this video without crying. I know that sounds weird, but last time I was an emotional wreck by the 5 and I cried and I felt kind of embarrassed. But as I said, you know, if I'm feeling things and it's from the book, I should let you know what I'm feeling, but I didn't expect to blubber so much. But I didn't cry today. Yay. So there we go. Anyway, I'll see you when I see you guys. Bye.